The clicking of designer heels against polished marble floors echoed through the upscale restaurant as Dr. Amelia Richardson adjusted her black blazer and approached the hostess stand. She had no idea that in the next 10 minutes, her simple request for a table would expose a truth that would change everything for Golden Vine Bistro and cost someone their job. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Dr. Amelia Richardson had been looking forward to this lunch for weeks. After completing a grueling month of double shifts at Chicago General Hospital, where she worked as the head of pediatric surgery, she finally had a free afternoon. Her younger sister Maya was graduating from Northwestern University with her master's degree in environmental law, and Amelia wanted to celebrate somewhere special. Golden Vine Bistro had caught her attention during her morning commute. The elegant restaurant sat prominently on Michigan Avenue, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering glimpses of crisp white tablecloths, gleaming silverware, and well-dressed patrons enjoying their meals. The reviews online praised not just the food but the impeccable service and welcoming atmosphere. It seemed perfect for a celebration. Amelia had chosen her outfit carefully. A tailored black blazer over a cream silk blouse, paired with her favorite burgundy heels that she'd splurged on after her promotion to department head. She felt confident and professional as she pushed through the heavy glass doors of Golden Vine Bistro at exactly 12:30 p.m. The interior was even more impressive than she'd imagined. Soft jazz music drifted from hidden speakers, while natural light streamed through the large windows, creating an almost ethereal glow over the dining room. Fresh flowers adorned each table, and the aroma of herbs and perfectly prepared dishes filled the air. This was exactly the kind of place where she and Maya could have a proper celebration. The hostess stand was positioned near the entrance, manned by a young woman with platinum blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her name tag read Jessica Pemberton in elegant script. Jessica was arranging menus with mechanical precision, her movements sharp and deliberate. She glanced up as Amelia approached, and something subtle shifted in her expression, a barely perceptible tightening around her eyes. "Good afternoon," Amelia said with a warm smile. "I'd like a table for two, please. My sister should be arriving in about 15 minutes. Jessica's gaze traveled slowly from Amelia's face down to her heels and back up again. The pause stretched longer than comfortable. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, her tone noticeably cooler than the greeting she'd given to the couple who had entered just before Amelia. "No, I don't, but I was hoping you might have something available. I saw several empty tables when I walked in." Quote. Jessica's fingers drummed against the hostess stand. "I'm sorry, but we're completely booked for the afternoon. Perhaps you could try somewhere else." She didn't even glance at the reservation book in front of her. Amelia felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach, the same feeling she'd experienced too many times before in her 34 years. But she maintained her composure. "Are you sure? I noticed quite a few open tables. Would it be possible to check your availability?" "I just told you we're fully booked," Jessica replied, her voice gaining an edge. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable at one of the restaurants down the street." The suggestion stung, particularly the emphasis on comfortable. Amelia had spent years navigating subtle discrimination in medical school and, throughout her career, developing an almost supernatural ability to distinguish between genuine policy and prejudice. This felt decidedly like the latter. "I understand you're busy," Amelia said, keeping her voice steady, "but could I speak with your manager? I'm celebrating my sister's graduation, and this restaurant was highly recommended." Jessica's jaw tightened. "The manager is unavailable. Look, I've already told you we don't have any tables. I can't be clearer than that." At that moment, an elderly white couple approached the hostess stand. Jessica's demeanor transformed instantly, her face brightening with a genuine smile. "Good afternoon. How can I help you today?" "We don't have a reservation," the woman said apologetically, "but we were hoping you might have a table for two." "Of course," Jessica replied warmly, immediately reaching for her reservation book. "Let me see what I can do for you." She ran her finger down the page, appearing to study it carefully. "Perfect, I have a lovely table by the window. Right this way." Amelia watched in stunned silence as Jessica personally escorted the couple to a prime table, one of the same tables she had claimed was reserved just moments earlier. The contrast in treatment was so stark, so undeniable, that several other patrons had begun to notice the exchange. When Jessica returned to the hostess stand, Amelia was still standing there. "I see you were able to find them a table after all," she said quietly. That was a different situation, Jessica replied curtly. They had called earlier. The lie came so easily that Amelia wondered how many times Jessica had used similar excuses. Really? Because I heard them say they didn't have a reservation. Jessica's face flushed slightly. Look, I don't appreciate being questioned about how I do my job. If you're not happy with our policies, you're welcome to leave. The restaurant had grown quieter, and Amelia realized that several nearby diners were watching the interaction unfold. She felt the familiar weight of being made a spectacle, of having her dignity challenged in public. But she also felt something else, a resolve that had carried her through medical school, through residency, through every moment when someone had tried to make her feel like she didn't belong. I'm not questioning your policies, Amelia said calmly. I'm questioning why those policies seem to change depending on who's asking. Jessica's eyes flashed with anger. I don't know what you're trying to imply, but I don't appreciate your tone. Security? The word hung in the air like a threat. Amelia felt her heart rate increase, but she remained perfectly still. She had done nothing wrong. She had simply asked for a table, the same as any other customer. Yet here she was, being treated like a problem to be removed. A security guard appeared from somewhere in the back of the restaurant, a large man with graying hair and kind eyes. He looked uncomfortable as he approached, glancing between Jessica and Amelia with obvious confusion. Is there a problem here? He asked, his voice gentle rather than threatening. This woman is harassing our staff and disturbing other guests, Jessica said quickly. I need her to leave immediately. The security guard looked at Amelia, who stood calmly with her hands at her sides, her voice never having risen above a conversational tone. His confusion deepened. Ma'am, is there something I can help you with? I simply asked for a table for lunch, Amelia explained. When I was told they were fully booked, I watched the hostess seat another couple who also didn't have a reservation. I asked to speak with a manager. The security guard's expression shifted as he processed this information. He had worked in customer service long enough to recognize the signs of discrimination, and something about this situation didn't sit right with him. But before he could respond, Jessica interjected again. She's lying. She was being aggressive and demanding special treatment. I want her removed from the premises. The tension in the restaurant was palpable now. Other diners had stopped their conversations to watch the drama unfold. Some looked sympathetic toward Amelia, while others seemed eager for the entertainment to continue. The staff members who had gathered were whispering among themselves, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to concerned. Amelia realized she was at a crossroads. She could leave quietly, avoid the scene, and find somewhere else to celebrate with Maya. It would be easier, less embarrassing, and would allow her to preserve what remained of her afternoon plans. But it would also mean accepting treatment that she knew was wrong, allowing Jessica to continue this behavior with other customers who might not have her education, her confidence, or her ability to articulate what was happening. I'm not going anywhere, she said finally, her voice carrying the quiet authority she used in the operating room. I have every right to be here, and I've done nothing to warrant being asked to leave. I want to speak with the owner or general manager immediately. Jessica's face went white, then red. You can't just demand to speak with whoever you want. This is a private establishment, and we have the right to refuse service to anyone. Yes, you do, Amelia agreed. But that right doesn't extend to refusing service based on race, which is exactly what's happening here. The words hung in the air, making explicit what everyone had been thinking but no one had been willing to say. Several patrons nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The staff members looked increasingly anxious, realizing that this situation was spiraling far beyond a simple seating dispute. Jessica's composure finally cracked completely. How dare you, she hissed. I am not a racist. I treat everyone equally, and I resent your accusations. But even as she protested, her behavior told a different story. The contrast between how she had treated Amelia and how she had treated the elderly couple was impossible to ignore, and several witnesses were now openly discussing what they had observed. The security guard, looking deeply uncomfortable with the entire situation, stepped closer to Jessica. Maybe we should get the manager, he suggested quietly. Let them handle this. The manager is not available, Jessica repeated stubbornly, and I don't need anyone's help to handle this situation. Quote, what Jessica didn't know was that her words were being overheard by more than just the gathered crowd of staff and customers. In the kitchen, prep cook Marcus Williams had been listening to the escalating confrontation through the service window. He had worked at Golden Vine Bistro for 3 years and had witnessed Jessica's behavior before, though never quite this blatantly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. More importantly, Marcus knew something that Jessica had forgotten in her anger and defensiveness. The owner, Sarah Chen, was indeed in the building. She had arrived an hour earlier for a surprise inspection of the lunch service, something she did periodically to ensure that her restaurant maintained the high standards she demanded. She was currently in her office upstairs, reviewing inventory reports and financial statements. Marcus wiped his hands on his apron and made a decision that would change everything. Quietly, he slipped away from his prep station and headed for the back stairs that led to the administrative offices. If Jessica wanted to claim the owner wasn't available, she was about to be proven very wrong. Meanwhile, in the dining room, the standoff continued. Amelia remained calm but resolute, while Jessica grew increasingly flustered and defensive. The other customers were divided between those who wanted to support Amelia and those who simply wanted the disruption to end so they could enjoy their meals in peace. What none of them realized was that in less than 10 minutes, Sarah Chen would descend those stairs, and everything would change. Marcus Williams took the back stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding with each step. In his 3 years at Golden Vine Bistro, he had never gone directly to the owner with a complaint about another employee, but what he was witnessing downstairs crossed every line of decency and professionalism that Sarah Chen had established when she opened the restaurant. Sarah Chen sat behind her mahogany desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and vendor invoices. At 42, she had built Golden Vine Bistro from nothing, transforming a failing diner into one of Chicago's most respected establishments. Her success hadn't come easily. As a second-generation Chinese-American woman in the restaurant industry, she had faced her own share of discrimination and had made it her mission to create a workplace where everyone was treated with dignity and respect. Marcus knocked softly on her office door. "Mrs. Chen, I'm sorry to bother you, but we have a serious situation downstairs that needs your immediate attention." Sarah looked up from her papers, noting the urgency in Marcus's voice and the concern etched across his usually calm features. "What's happening, Marcus?" "Jessica is refusing to seat a black customer who's done nothing wrong. She seated a white couple without a reservation right after telling this woman we were fully booked. Now she's calling security and threatening to have the customer removed for asking to speak with management." Sarah's expression hardened. She had hired Jessica 6 months ago, despite some reservations about her attitude during the interview. The young woman had impressive credentials and glowing references from her previous job at an upscale restaurant in Lincoln Park, but there had been something in her demeanor that had given Sarah pause. Unfortunately, they had been desperately short-staffed at the time, and Jessica's experience had made her seem like the perfect solution to their hostess problems. "How long has this been going on?" Sarah asked, already rising from her chair. "About 10 minutes. The whole dining room is watching. Some customers are getting upset, and I think a few people might be recording with their phones." The mention of phones and potential recordings sent a chill down Sarah's spine. In today's world, incidents like this could destroy a restaurant's reputation within hours. But more than her business concerns, she was genuinely horrified that one of her employees was treating a customer this way in her establishment. "Let's go," she said firmly, grabbing her jacket from the back of her chair. Downstairs, the situation had indeed escalated further. Amelia remained poised and dignified, but Jessica's behavior had become increasingly erratic. Several customers had indeed begun recording the confrontation with their smartphones, while others were asking for their check so they could leave. "I'm telling you for the last time," Jessica was saying, her voice now loud enough to carry across the entire dining room, "we have the right to refuse service to anyone, and I'm exercising that right. You need to leave immediately." "And I'm telling you," Amelia replied evenly, "that I have done nothing to warrant being refused service except to ask for a table. Your behavior suggests that your decision is based on my race, which is illegal." The word illegal seemed to trigger something in Jessica. "You can't just throw around accusations like that. I could sue you for defamation." "Actually," said a voice from behind them, "the only person who might face legal consequences here is you." Everyone turned to see Sarah Chen descending the main staircase, her expression thunderous. She moved with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to command, and the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath as she approached the hostess stand. Jessica's face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, relief, then growing alarm as she registered her employer's obvious anger. "Mrs. Chen," Jessica said, forcing brightness into her voice. "I was just handling a difficult customer situation. This woman has been causing a disturbance and refusing to leave when I explained that we're fully booked." Sarah's gaze moved past Jessica to Amelia, taking in her professional attire, her calm demeanor, and the dignity with which she was handling what was clearly a humiliating situation. Then Sarah looked around the dining room, noting the many empty tables and the uncomfortable expressions on her staff members' faces. "I see," Sarah said quietly. "And when exactly did we become fully booked? Because when I walked through the dining room 20 minutes ago, we had at least 12 available tables." Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Well, those tables are reserved for later reservations and—" "Mrs. Chen," Amelia interjected politely, "I don't want to cause any more disruption to your restaurant, but I feel you should know that after your hostess told me you were fully booked, I watched her immediately seat another couple, who also stated they didn't have a reservation." Sarah's jaw tightened. She turned to look at the elderly couple, who were now trying very hard to appear invisible at their window table. Then she looked back at Jessica, whose face had gone pale. "Is this true?" Sarah asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "It's not what it sounds like," Jessica stammered. "They had called earlier to inquire about availability, so technically—" "Stop," Sarah's single word cut through Jessica's explanation like a blade. "Don't make this worse by lying to me." She turned to address the elderly couple directly. "Excuse me, sir, ma'am, did you call earlier about a reservation?" The elderly man shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "No, we didn't. We just stopped in hoping you might have a table available." "And how long did you wait to be seated?" "We didn't wait at all," the woman replied. "The young lady seated us immediately." Sarah nodded grimly and turned back to Jessica, whose face was now bright red. "In my office, now." "Mrs. Chen, if you would just let me explain." "Office, now." Sarah's tone brooked no argument. She then turned to Amelia with a completely different expression. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize for how you've been treated in my establishment. I'm Sarah Chen, the owner, and I want to personally ensure that you have an excellent dining experience today." "Thank you," Amelia said, her first smile since entering the restaurant. "I'm Dr. Amelia Richardson, and I was hoping to have lunch here before my sister arrives to celebrate her graduation." "It would be my honor to seat you personally," Sarah replied. "Would you prefer the window table, or perhaps something quieter toward the back?" "The window would be lovely, thank you." As Sarah escorted Amelia to the prime table that Jessica had claimed was reserved, she could feel the weight of every eye in the restaurant following them. The contrast between this respectful treatment and what had just occurred was stark and obvious to everyone present. "Your server will be Elena Martinez," Sarah said as she pulled out Amelia's chair. "She's one of our best, and I'll personally ensure that everything is perfect. Please order whatever you'd like. Lunch is at home today." "That's very kind, but not necessary," Amelia replied. "I just wanted to be treated like any other customer." "Which is exactly what should have happened from the moment you walked in," Sarah said firmly. "Again, I am deeply sorry." As Sarah headed toward her office, she could hear the murmur of conversation resuming throughout the restaurant. Several customers approached her to express their approval of how she had handled the situation, while others simply nodded respectfully as she passed. She also noticed that some patrons were putting away their phones, apparently satisfied that justice was being served. In her office, Jessica was pacing nervously, rehearsing various explanations and justifications in her head. When Sarah entered and closed the door behind her, Jessica immediately launched into her defense. "Mrs. Chen, I know this looks bad, but you have to understand the pressure I'm under. We've been so busy lately, and I was just trying to manage the seating efficiently. Sometimes you have to make quick decisions about which customers will be the best fit for." "Stop talking," Sarah said, settling behind her desk. "I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say, because your job depends on it." Jessica fell silent, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her blazer. "In the 6 months you've worked here, I've received 3 complaints about your treatment of customers. All 3 involved customers of color. I chose to give you the benefit of the doubt and attributed it to inexperience or poor judgment. Clearly, I was wrong. Those complaints were unfair, Jessica protested. I treat everyone the same way. Some people just look for reasons to be offended. Sarah's expression grew even colder. What I witnessed downstairs was not someone looking for reasons to be offended. What I witnessed was a professional woman asking politely for a table and being told we were fully booked, then watching you immediately seat another couple in front of her. That's not poor judgment, Jessica. That's discrimination. I am not a racist, Jessica exclaimed, her voice rising. I have black friends. I voted for Obama. You can't just accuse me of discrimination because one customer got upset. I'm not accusing you, Sarah replied calmly. I'm telling you what I observed with my own eyes. You treated two customers completely differently based on their race. That's the textbook definition of discrimination. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, though whether from genuine remorse or fear for her job was unclear. Please, Mrs. Chen, you have to understand. I've been working in restaurants for 8 years. I know how to read people, how to tell which customers are going to be problems. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts. Your instincts told you that a well-dressed physician would be a problem customer, but an elderly couple wouldn't be? How do you know she's a physician? Because unlike you, I took 30 seconds to actually speak with her like a human being. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Jessica, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want an honest answer. Have you ever refused service to a white customer who didn't have a reservation? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Jessica's mouth opened and closed several times before she finally spoke. It's more complicated than that. You have to consider the whole picture, the ambiance of the restaurant, what other customers expect. That's not an answer to my question. Jessica looked down at her hands. No, she whispered, I haven't. Sarah nodded slowly. At least you're finally being honest. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder. This is your personnel file. As I mentioned, there have been 3 previous complaints about your conduct with customers of color. I documented each incident, hoping that you would learn and improve. Clearly, that hasn't happened. Please don't fire me, Jessica said, tears now flowing freely. I need this job. I have student loans, rent. I can't afford to be unemployed. You should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate a customer in my restaurant, Sarah replied. But let me ask you something else. Do you think Dr. Richardson should have to endure discrimination just so you can keep your job? Jessica had no answer for that. Sarah continued, what you did today wasn't just wrong. It was illegal. Dr. Richardson would have every right to file a complaint with the Chicago Commission on Human Relations, or even pursue legal action against you and this restaurant. The fact that she chose to handle this with dignity and grace doesn't excuse your behavior. I'm sorry, Jessica said quietly. I really am. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The problem, Jessica, is that you meant for it to go exactly as far as it did. You wanted Dr. Richardson to leave quietly and accept your decision. You never expected her to stand up for herself, and you certainly never expected me to witness your behavior firsthand. Sarah stood up and walked to the window overlooking the dining room. She could see Amelia sitting at her table, now joined by a younger woman who could only be her sister Maya. They were laughing together, apparently enjoying their celebration despite the earlier unpleasantness. Do you see that woman down there? Sarah asked, not turning around. She's celebrating her sister's master's degree graduation. This should have been one of the happiest days of their lives. Instead, you turned it into a humiliating ordeal that she'll remember forever. When Sarah turned back around, Jessica was staring at the floor, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Sarah turned back to face Jessica, her decision crystallizing with each passing second. The young woman sat hunched in the chair across from her desk, mascara streaked down her cheeks, still clinging to the hope that tears might save her job. Jessica, I want you to understand something, Sarah said, her voice steady but firm. This restaurant represents everything I've worked for over the past 8 years. My reputation, my employees' livelihoods, and the trust of this community all depend on the standards we maintain here. Quote. Jessica looked up hopefully, interpreting Sarah's words as a possible reprieve. Which is why, Sarah continued, I cannot and will not tolerate discrimination of any kind in my establishment. You're terminated, effective immediately. The words hit Jessica like a physical blow. No, please. I swear I'll change. I'll take sensitivity training. I'll apologize to that woman, whatever you want. Just please don't fire me. Sarah walked to her filing cabinet and pulled out a termination form. The time for change was after the first complaint 6 months ago, or the second one 3 months ago, or the third one last month. Instead, you've escalated to publicly humiliating a customer in front of a dining room full of witnesses. But I didn't mean... What you meant is irrelevant, Sarah interrupted. What matters is what you did and how it reflects on this business. I won't risk the reputation I've spent years building because you can't treat all customers with basic human decency. Jessica's tears turned to anger. Fine, but you're making a huge mistake. That woman was obviously looking for trouble, playing the race card to get free food and attention. You're going to regret taking her side over a loyal employee. Sarah's pen stopped moving across the termination form. She looked up at Jessica with a mixture of disgust and disappointment. A loyal employee? Jessica, you just proved exactly why I'm making the right decision. Even now, when faced with the consequences of your actions, you're still trying to blame the victim. I'm not blaming anyone! I'm just saying that some people what? Some black people are just troublemakers looking for handouts? Sarah's voice carried a dangerous edge. Is that what you were about to say? Jessica's mouth snapped shut, realizing she had just made her situation exponentially worse. Sarah finished filling out the termination form and slid it across the desk. Sign this. Your final paycheck will be mailed to your address on file. Security will escort you out. This is a legal termination, Jessica said desperately. You can't fire someone for doing their job. Actually, I can fire someone for discriminating against customers based on race, which is exactly what happened. Illinois is an at-will employment state, and discrimination is grounds for immediate termination with cause. You might want to consult an employment attorney before making threats you can't back up. Quote, Jessica signed the form with shaking hands, her earlier defiance crumbling into defeat. What am I supposed to tell my next employer? How do I explain being fired? You could start by telling them the truth, Sarah suggested, though I suspect you'll come up with something else. Either way, that's no longer my concern. Sarah pressed the intercom button on her desk phone. Security to the administrative office, please. Within minutes, the same security guard who had been called to remove Amelia was standing in Sarah's doorway. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Tom, please escort Jessica to the employee break room to collect her personal belongings, then to the exit. She's no longer employed here. Tom nodded, his expression neutral but professional. As Jessica gathered her purse and jacket, she made one final attempt to salvage the situation. Mrs. Chen, I really hope you reconsider this. When corporate customers start complaining about the new direction you're taking this place, when your regular clientele finds somewhere else to eat, don't say I didn't warn you. Sarah didn't even look up from her paperwork. Goodbye, Jessica. After Jessica and Tom left, Sarah sat alone in her office for several minutes, processing what had just occurred. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the restaurant's online reviews, knowing that within hours there would likely be posts about the incident. In the age of social media, situations like this could either destroy a business or, if handled properly, actually strengthen its reputation. She also thought about her own experiences as a young entrepreneur, the subtle and not-so-subtle discrimination she had faced when trying to secure loans, negotiate leases, and establish vendor relationships. The restaurant industry was notoriously difficult for women and minorities, and she had promised herself that her establishment would be different. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Elena Martinez, one of her most experienced servers, peered around the door. Mrs. Chen? I wanted to update you on Dr. Richardson's experience. She and her sister are having a wonderful time. The doctor specifically asked me to tell you how much she appreciates how you handled the situation. How are the other customers reacting? Better than expected, actually. Several people have complimented our food and service, and a few mentioned how impressed they were with your response to the incident. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson at Table 12 said they'll definitely be back, and they've already recommended us to their friends. Sarah felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. What about staff morale? Elena smiled. Honestly, everyone's relieved. We've all seen Jessica's behavior with certain customers, but none of us felt comfortable saying anything. Marcus said he's never been prouder to work here. Good. I want to address the entire staff before the dinner shift. Can you ask everyone to gather in the private dining room at 4 o'clock? Of course. Is there anything else you need? Sarah thought for a moment. Yes, I want you to comp Dr. Richardson's entire meal, including any wine or dessert they order, and give them one of our gift certificates for a future visit. Already taken care of, Elena said with a grin. I had the same thought. After Elena left, Sarah decided to venture back into the dining room to check on operations and personally ensure that the atmosphere had returned to normal. The lunch crowd was in full swing, and the earlier tension had completely dissipated. Conversations flowed naturally, silverware clinked against plates, and the gentle jazz music created exactly the ambiance she had envisioned when she first designed the space. She made her way over to Dr. Richardson's table, where the two sisters were deep in animated conversation over their dessert course. Dr. Richardson, I hope you and your sister are enjoying your meal? Amelia looked up with a genuine smile. Mrs. Chen, everything has been absolutely wonderful. Elena is an exceptional server, and the food is outstanding. I'm Maya Richardson, the younger woman said, extending her hand. My sister told me what happened earlier. And I have to say, your response was exactly what we needed to see. It takes real integrity to stand up for what's right, especially when it means making a difficult business decision. Thank you, but I didn't do anything special, Sarah replied. I simply treated the situation the way any responsible business owner should. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, Amelia said quietly. I've experienced similar situations before, where management chose to support their employee rather than address obvious discrimination. Your willingness to take immediate action means more than you might realize. Maya nodded in agreement. As someone who studied law, I can tell you that most discrimination cases never get resolved because businesses either ignore the problem or try to sweep it under the rug. You did the opposite. Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her chest. This restaurant represents my values and my vision for what hospitality should be. Everyone who walks through our doors deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of their background. That's exactly the kind of establishment we want to support, Amelia said. In fact, I'd like to ask if you cater private events. I'm hosting a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital in 3 months, and I'd love to have Golden Vine Bistro provide the catering. Sarah's eyes lit up. We absolutely do catering, and I would be honored to work with you on your fundraiser. Let me get you my business card with my direct number. As Sarah walked back to retrieve her business cards, she reflected on how dramatically the afternoon had shifted. What had started as a crisis that could have destroyed her restaurant's reputation was transforming into an opportunity to build meaningful community relationships. At the bar, she encountered Marcus, who was polishing glasses between orders. Mrs. Chen, I hope I did the right thing by coming to get you, he said quietly. I've never gone over someone's head like that before, but what I was seeing just wasn't right. Marcus, you absolutely did the right thing. Thank you for having the courage to speak up. If more people were willing to intervene when they witnessed discrimination, incidents like this would be much less common. I grew up in a neighborhood where stuff like that happened all the time, Marcus said. My mom always taught me that staying silent when you see someone being mistreated makes you part of the problem. Your mother raised you well, Sarah said. And I want you to know that I'll always support employees who stand up for our values, even when it's difficult. Marcus smiled broadly. That's why I love working here, Mrs. Chen. You actually practice what you preach. Sarah returned to Dr. Richardson's table with her business card and a gift certificate. This is for a future dinner for 4, she explained. I hope you'll come back and bring friends. We definitely will, Maya said, and I'll be sure to post about our experience on social media. People need to know about restaurants that truly welcome everyone. As the sisters prepared to drive, Richardson stood and shook Sarah's hand. Mrs. Chen, thank you for restoring my faith in the hospitality industry. What could have been a terrible experience became a reminder that there are still business owners who prioritize doing the right thing over avoiding confrontation. Thank you for handling a difficult situation with such grace and dignity, Sarah replied. It would have been easy to leave quietly, but you chose to stand your ground. That took real courage. After the sisters left, Sarah noticed that several other customers were approaching the hostess stand to compliment her handling of the incident. Word was already spreading through the restaurant community, and her phone was beginning to ring with calls from local food bloggers and journalists wanting to hear her side of the story. By 3:30, Sarah had fielded calls from the Chicago Tribune food section, 2 local television stations, and a blogger from a popular Chicago dining website. Each conversation reinforced her conviction that she had made the right decision, even if it meant dealing with increased scrutiny and attention. As she prepared for the staff meeting, Sarah realized that this incident would become a defining moment for Golden Vine Bistro. How they handled the aftermath would determine not just their reputation, but their identity as a business and their role in the community. At exactly 4 o'clock, Sarah stood before her assembled staff in the private dining room. 15 employees had gathered: servers, kitchen staff, bartenders, and the remaining front-of-house team. The mood was a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, though most had already heard through the restaurant grapevine about Jessica's termination. "I've called this meeting to address what happened during lunch service today," Sarah began, scanning the faces around the table. "I want to be completely transparent about my decision-making process and what it means for our restaurant moving forward." Elena raised her hand tentatively. "Mrs. Chen, we all know Jessica was fired. Is the restaurant in trouble because of what happened?" Sarah shook her head. "On the contrary. While the situation was unfortunate, our response to it has actually strengthened our position in the community. I've already received several calls from local media outlets, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive." Marcus leaned forward. "What exactly are we supposed to tell people who ask about it? I mean, customers are going to want to know what happened." "Tell them the truth," Sarah replied without hesitation. "We don't tolerate discrimination in any form, and when an employee violates that principle, there are immediate consequences. We're proud of our commitment to treating every customer with respect and dignity." James Rodriguez, the head chef, spoke up from the back of the room. "I've been working in restaurants for 20 years, and I've seen situations like this handled very differently. Usually, management tries to smooth things over quietly. What made you decide to take such a public stand?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Because sweeping discrimination under the rug doesn't make it go away. It just allows it to continue. Every time we ignore or excuse prejudiced behavior, we become complicit in it. I opened this restaurant to create something better, and that means holding ourselves to higher standards." "But what if this hurts business?" asked Thomas Webb, one of the newer servers. "I mean, some customers might not like that we're making political statements." "Treating people equally isn't a political statement," Sarah responded firmly. "It's a basic human rights issue. And frankly, if customers don't want to eat at a restaurant that refuses to tolerate discrimination, then they're not the kind of customers we want anyway." The room fell silent as staff members absorbed this declaration. Finally, Maria Santos, a veteran server, began to clap slowly. Others joined in, and soon the entire room was applauding Sarah's stance. "I have something else to share," Sarah continued once the applause died down. "Dr. Richardson, the customer who was discriminated against today, is a pediatric surgeon at Chicago General Hospital. She's also organizing a major fundraiser for the Children's Hospital, and she's asked us to cater the event." Excited murmurs rippled through the group. Catering high-profile charity events was exactly the kind of opportunity that could elevate Golden Vine Bistro's reputation and attract new clientele. "This is a direct result of how we handled today's incident," Sarah explained. "Dr. Richardson specifically said she wanted to work with a restaurant that shares her values. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't just feel good, it's also good business." Elena smiled broadly. "So Jessica's racism basically just cost her a job and got us a major catering contract?" Quote, "That's one way to look at it," Sarah agreed with a slight smile. "But more importantly, we've established ourselves as a restaurant that stands behind its principles. That's the kind of reputation that builds lasting success." After the meeting ended, Sarah returned to her office to find her voicemail box full and her email inbox overflowing. News of the incident had spread far beyond the restaurant's immediate vicinity. Food bloggers, community activists, and business leaders were all reaching out to express their support for her decision. One message stood out from the rest. It was from David Kim, president of the Chicago Restaurant Association, congratulating her on her principled leadership and asking if she would be willing to speak at their upcoming conference about diversity and inclusion in the hospitality industry. Another email came from the Chicago Urban League, inviting her to join their Business Leadership Council. A third was from a prominent food critic for Chicago Magazine, requesting an interview about her philosophy on hospitality and community responsibility. But perhaps the most meaningful message came from Dr. Patricia Williams, the chief of staff at Chicago General Hospital, who had heard about the incident from Dr. Richardson. Dr. Williams wanted to discuss making Golden Vine Bistro the preferred catering partner for all hospital fundraising events. As Sarah responded to emails and returned phone calls, she began to realize the true scope of what had happened. By taking a firm stand against discrimination, she had inadvertently positioned Golden Vine Bistro as a leader in the movement toward more inclusive business practices. Around 6 o'clock, Elena knocked on her office door. "Mrs. Chen? There's a reporter from Channel 7 News downstairs. She's asking if she can interview you about today's incident." Sarah glanced at her reflection in the small mirror behind her desk, straightened her jacket, and nodded. "Send her up. It's time to tell our story properly." Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 was a seasoned journalist who specialized in community affairs and social justice issues. She had covered numerous discrimination cases over the years and was known for her balanced, thorough reporting. "Mrs. Chen, thank you for agreeing to speak with us," Jennifer said as her cameraman set up the equipment. "Can you walk me through what happened here today?" Quote, Sarah recounted the incident objectively, focusing on the facts rather than editorializing about Jessica's motivations. She emphasized her commitment to equal treatment for all customers and explained why immediate termination was the only appropriate response. "Some business owners might argue that firing an employee over a single incident seems harsh," Jennifer observed. "How do you respond to that criticism?" "This wasn't a single incident," Sarah clarified. "I had received 3 previous complaints about this employee's treatment of customers of color. Today's incident was simply the most blatant example of a pattern of discriminatory behavior. When someone repeatedly demonstrates that they can't treat all customers with equal respect, they can't represent my restaurant. What message do you hope other business owners take from your response?" Sarah looked directly into the camera. "That discrimination has no place in the hospitality industry. Our job is to welcome everyone and make them feel valued. When we fail to do that, we fail at the most basic level of what it means to provide service." The interview continued for another 15 minutes, with Sarah discussing her background, her vision for the restaurant, and her commitment to being an active participant in creating positive change in her community. After the news crew left, Sarah felt a sense of relief. She had presented herself and her business authentically, without trying to downplay the seriousness of what had occurred or overstate her role in addressing it. The evening dinner service proceeded smoothly, with several customers making a point of complimenting the staff and expressing their support for the restaurant's values. Reservations for the following week had actually increased, suggesting that the incident was attracting rather than repelling customers. As the evening wound down, Sarah found herself back in the dining room, observing the scene that had become so familiar over the past 8 years. The soft lighting, the comfortable conversations, the professional service, everything that she had worked so hard to create was still intact, perhaps even stronger than before. Marcus approached her as she stood near the window, watching the Chicago skyline twinkle in the distance. "Mrs. Chen, I wanted to thank you again for what you did today. My younger brother is starting college next year, and he's been worried about facing discrimination when he enters the job market. When I tell him about what happened here today, I think it'll give him hope that there are employers who actually care about doing the right thing." Sarah smiled warmly. "Your brother should know that his character and work ethic matter more than anyone's prejudices. And if he ever needs a reference or just someone to talk to about workplace issues, he can always reach out to me." As Marcus returned to his closing duties, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Richardson. "Mrs. Chen, I saw the news interview. Thank you for using your platform to speak out against discrimination. The fundraiser is going to be even more meaningful knowing that we're partnering with someone who shares our commitment to equality and justice." The message was followed by another from Maya Richardson, posted about our experience today on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. "Already getting messages from friends who want to make reservations. You're going to need a bigger restaurant." Sarah chuckled as she read the messages, then looked around her dining room one more time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight she felt confident that Golden Vine Bistro was exactly where it needed to be, not just as a business, but as a positive force in the community. The incident with Jessica had forced her to confront some difficult truths about the hospitality industry and her own responsibilities as a business owner. But it had also reminded her why she had opened the restaurant in the first place, to create a space where everyone could feel welcome, valued, and respected. As she locked up for the night, Sarah realized that this day would forever be a turning point for Golden Vine Bistro. They had faced a crisis that could have destroyed everything she had built, but instead, it had become the foundation for something even better. The restaurant industry was notoriously challenging, with razor-thin profit margins and constant pressure to cut corners wherever possible. But Sarah had proven that maintaining high ethical standards wasn't just the right thing to do. It was also smart business. Walking to her car in the parking garage, Sarah felt a profound sense of satisfaction. She had stood up for her values when it mattered most, and the results were already exceeding her expectations. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to build on this foundation, and she was ready for whatever came next. 6 months after the incident that changed everything, Sarah Chen stood in the gleaming kitchen of Golden Vine Bistro's new catering facility, watching her expanded team prepare for what would be the most significant event in the restaurant's history. The Chicago Mayor's Office had commissioned them to cater the city's first annual Diversity and Excellence Awards, recognizing businesses and individuals who had made outstanding contributions to creating inclusive communities. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that Golden Vine Bistro had been selected not just as the caterer, but as one of the award recipients. The restaurant would be honored with the Mayor's Business Leadership Award for their commitment to equality and community engagement. What had started as a crisis management situation had evolved into something far more meaningful, a blueprint for how businesses could actively contribute to social progress. Mrs. Chen, the delivery trucks are here for the McCormick Place setup, announced Carlos Mendoza, her new operations manager. Sarah had hired Carlos 2 months earlier as the catering business had grown beyond what she could personally oversee. He brought 15 years of experience from Chicago's top event management companies, but more importantly, he shared her vision of hospitality as a force for positive change. Perfect timing, Sarah replied, reviewing the detailed timeline they had developed for serving 1,200 guests. Is the recognition video ready for the pre-event screening? Carlos nodded. The production team finished it yesterday. Dr. Richardson did an incredible job narrating the story of your partnership. I think people are going to be genuinely moved by how this all started. The video Carlos referenced was a short documentary that the mayor's communications team had produced about Golden Vine Bistro's journey, from that difficult day 6 months ago to their current status as a model for socially responsible business practices. Dr. Amelia Richardson had agreed to serve as the narrator, telling the story from her perspective as both the victim of discrimination and the beneficiary of principled leadership. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Richardson. Just finished my speech for tonight. Can't wait to see you receive this recognition. Your parents would be so proud. The mention of her parents brought a wave of emotion. Sarah's father had passed away 3 years earlier, never seeing the full realization of the dreams he had sacrificed so much to make possible. Her mother, however, would be in the audience tonight, having flown in from San Francisco, where she now lived with Sarah's younger brother. Mrs. Chen, Elena called from across the kitchen. Channel 5 is here for the pre-event interview. They're setting up in the main dining room. Sarah smoothed her chef's coat and made her way to the dining room, where a news crew was arranging cameras and lights. The reporter, Michael Davidson, had covered the original incident 6 months earlier and had followed the restaurant's transformation journey ever since. Sarah, congratulations on tonight's recognition, Michael said as they prepared to film. When we first met 6 months ago, could you have imagined this moment? Sarah considered the question thoughtfully. Honestly, Michael, 6 months ago I was just trying to do the right thing in a difficult situation. I never imagined that one moment of standing up for our values would lead to such profound changes, not just for our business, but for our entire understanding of what hospitality can be. Tell me about those changes. How has Golden Vine Bistro evolved since that day? We've grown from a single restaurant to a comprehensive hospitality group, Sarah explained. We now operate our original location, a catering division that serves major events throughout the Midwest, and a consulting practice that helps other restaurants develop inclusive service standards. But the most important change has been in our mission. We're no longer just serving food. We're actively working to create spaces where everyone feels valued and respected. Michael leaned forward. You've become something of a spokesperson for diversity in the restaurant industry. How do you handle that responsibility? With humility and determination, Sarah replied. I never sought out this platform, but I recognize the opportunity it represents. If our story can encourage other business owners to examine their own practices and make positive changes, then something meaningful comes from what was initially a very painful situation. The interview continued for another 15 minutes, with Sarah discussing the partnerships they had formed with organizations like the Chicago Urban League, the NAACP, and various professional associations representing minority-owned businesses. She also spoke about the mentorship program they had launched, helping other restaurant owners develop training protocols for recognizing and addressing discrimination. After the news crew departed, Sarah returned to the kitchen to find her team putting the finishing touches on the afternoon's preparation. The menu for tonight's event was ambitious, a fusion of traditional American dishes with influences from the diverse communities that made Chicago unique. Each course had been designed to tell a story about the city's cultural richness and the strength that comes from embracing differences rather than fearing them. "Chef Rodriguez, how are we looking at the timing?" Sarah asked. James looked up from the sauce station with a confident smile. "Everything's on track. The transportation team leaves in 2 hours, and we'll have the first course plated and ready exactly at 7:30. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. James had been instrumental in developing the expanded menu offerings that had made their catering division so successful. His creativity and attention to detail had earned recognition from several culinary publications, bringing additional prestige to the Golden Vine Bistro brand. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah found herself reflecting on the personal growth she had experienced alongside her business expansion. 6 months ago, she had been a competent restaurant owner, focused primarily on daily operations and customer satisfaction. The incident with Jessica had forced her to grapple with larger questions about her role in the community and her responsibility to use her platform for positive change. That evolution had led to opportunities she never could have imagined. Last month, she had been invited to speak at the National Restaurant Association's annual conference about creating inclusive workplace cultures. Next month, she would be addressing the Chicago Chamber of Commerce about the business case for diversity and inclusion. She had also been approached by a major publisher about writing a book on leadership and values in the hospitality industry. "Mrs. Chen, your mother is here," Elena announced, escorting an elegant woman in her 70s into the kitchen. "Mama!" Sarah embraced her mother warmly, switching to Mandarin for their private conversation. "I'm so proud of you, daughter," Mrs. Chen said, her eyes bright with emotion. "Your father always said that success without principle is meaningless. Tonight proves that you understood his lesson." Sarah felt tears welling up as she hugged her mother. "I wish he could be here to see this." "He is here," her mother replied firmly. "Every time you choose to do what's right instead of what's easy, he is here with you." As evening approached, the team loaded their equipment and ingredients into the specially designed catering trucks that would transport everything to McCormick Place. Sarah had invested heavily in mobile kitchen technology that allowed them to maintain the same quality standards for large events that guests expected at the restaurant. The ride to the convention center gave Sarah a few minutes of quiet reflection. Through the truck's window, she watched the Chicago skyline pass by, thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The city had embraced Golden Vine Bistro as a symbol of progress and possibility, but Sarah knew that the real work was just beginning. At McCormick Place, the team executed their setup with military precision. Years of catering experience had taught them the importance of systematic preparation, but tonight's event demanded perfection. Representatives from dozens of media outlets would be present, along with business leaders, political figures, and community activists who would be watching every detail. "Mrs. Chen, Mayor Johnson would like to speak with you before the event begins," Carlos informed her as they completed the final preparation stages. Sarah made her way to the VIP reception area, where Mayor Katherine Johnson was greeting early arrivals. The mayor, a dynamic leader known for her commitment to social justice and economic development, had made diversity and inclusion cornerstones of her administration. "Sarah, I'm so excited to finally meet you in person," Mayor Johnson said warmly. "Your story has been an inspiration to business leaders throughout the city. Thank you for showing that doing the right thing and running a successful business aren't mutually exclusive." "Thank you, Mayor Johnson. It's an honor to be recognized alongside so many other outstanding organizations and individuals." "I have to ask," the mayor continued, "what advice would you give to other business owners who might be hesitant to take strong stands on social issues?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I would tell them that neutrality in the face of injustice is actually taking a position. You're choosing to maintain the status quo. Real leadership means being willing to stand up for your values, even when it's uncomfortable or risky. "That's exactly the kind of leadership our city needs more of," Mayor Johnson replied. "I hope tonight's recognition encourages other businesses to follow your example." As guests began arriving for the main event, Sarah positioned herself where she could observe both the service and the reactions of the attendees. The ballroom was filled with Chicago's most influential leaders, all gathered to celebrate progress in creating more inclusive communities. Dr. Richardson approached Sarah's observation post, looking elegant in a navy dress that perfectly complemented her confident bearing. "Sarah, how are you feeling about tonight?" "Grateful, nervous, and determined all at the same time," Sarah admitted. "This recognition feels like both an ending and a beginning." "That's exactly what it is," Dr. Richardson agreed. "Tonight celebrates how far we've come, but it also challenges us to keep pushing forward. Your story proves that individual actions can create systemic change, but only if we're willing to keep taking those actions." The evening's program began with a video presentation highlighting the achievements of all the award recipients. When Golden Vine Bistro's segment began, Sarah watched herself on the large screens throughout the ballroom, recounting the events of that day 6 months earlier. The video showed the restaurant's transformation, featured interviews with staff members, and included testimonials from community leaders who had been inspired by their example. But the most powerful moment came when Dr. Richardson appeared on screen, speaking directly to the camera. What Sarah Chen did that day wasn't extraordinary because it was complicated. It was extraordinary because it was simple. She saw injustice and refused to accept it. She chose principle over convenience, values over profit, and in doing so, she reminded all of us what real leadership looks like. The ballroom erupted in applause as the video concluded, and Sarah felt a profound sense of validation for the difficult journey that had brought them to this moment. When her name was called to receive the award, Sarah walked to the podium with her mother beside her, carrying the hopes and dreams of everyone who had supported Golden Vine Bistro's transformation. 6 months ago, Sarah began, I thought I was simply making a personnel decision. Today, I understand that I was really making a choice about what kind of business I wanted to run and what kind of community I wanted to help create. She paused, looking out at the 1,200 faces in the audience. This award doesn't belong just to me. It belongs to every employee who helped create a culture of inclusion, every customer who supported our values, and every community partner who believed that businesses can be forces for positive change. Sarah's voice grew stronger as she continued. But most importantly, this award belongs to Dr. Amelia Richardson, whose grace and dignity in the face of discrimination reminded me that how we respond to injustice defines who we are. Thank you for trusting us with your story and for helping us become better than we were. The standing ovation that followed seemed to last forever, but eventually the audience settled down for Sarah's closing remarks. Tomorrow we return to the daily work of running a restaurant and serving our community. This recognition is wonderful, but it's not the goal. It's fuel for the journey ahead. There are still too many people who face discrimination, too many businesses that choose convenience over character, and too many opportunities to do better that we haven't seized yet. Sarah looked directly into the television cameras that were broadcasting the event live. To every business owner watching tonight, you have the power to make a difference. Every interaction with a customer is a chance to affirm human dignity. Every hiring decision is an opportunity to build inclusion. Every day you open your doors, you choose what kind of community you want to help create. She held up the Crystal Award that represented months of hard work and transformation. This belongs to all of us who believe that business can be a force for justice. Let's make sure we earn it every day. As Sarah returned to her seat beside her mother, she felt the weight of responsibility and possibility in equal measure. The recognition was gratifying, but the real reward was knowing that Golden Vine Bistro had become something larger than a restaurant. It had become a symbol of what was possible when people chose courage over comfort. The evening concluded with a reception where dozens of business leaders approached Sarah to discuss partnerships, speaking opportunities, and collaboration on future initiatives. Each conversation reinforced her growing understanding that the incident 6 months ago had been not an ending, but a beginning, the start of a journey toward building the kind of community where everyone could thrive. As the team loaded up their equipment for the return trip, Sarah took one last look around the empty ballroom. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight had proven that the values they had fought to uphold were not just morally right, they were the foundation for lasting success and meaningful impact. The story that began with discrimination and pain had transformed into something beautiful and powerful, proof that individual courage could create collective change, and that doing the right thing was always, ultimately, the smart thing to do. Walking to her car in the convention center parking garage, Sarah found herself accompanied by Dr. Richardson and her mother, both women who had witnessed her journey from different perspectives but with equal pride. "You know what I'm most proud of?" Dr. Richardson said as they reached Sarah's vehicle. "It's not just that you fired Jessica that day, or that you've built this incredible business success. It's that you've proven systemic change is possible when individuals refuse to accept the unacceptable." Sarah's mother nodded in agreement. "In China, we have a saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. You planted something important that day, daughter. Tonight, we saw it bear fruit." As Dr. Richardson headed to her own car, she turned back one final time. "Sarah, I have one more surprise for you. The medical board has approved funding for a permanent diversity and inclusion position at the hospital. We want you to serve on the search committee. Your voice matters in spaces far beyond the restaurant industry." Driving home through the quiet Chicago streets, Sarah reflected on how profoundly her understanding of success had evolved. 6 months ago, she measured achievement in covers served and profit margins. Tonight, she understood that true success meant using whatever platform you had to make the world more just, more inclusive, and more hopeful for everyone who came after you. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.